and fossil wombat the size of a mini. Here's a fossil of a guinea pig that was 1,500 pounds. That's a big guinea pig. Birds have been found 13 feet tall. Here's an elephant bird egg. The one behind it's an ostrich egg, which is also huge. They find fossils of prehistoric goose that stood as tall as an elephant and weighed half a ton. How'd you like to have that for Thanksgiving dinner? Tell Tiny Tim about that goose. Yeah. Fossil beavers have been found 8 feet long. Here's a guy holding a beaver jaw from about a 7 or 8 foot beaver. There's a 6 foot beaver found in Ohio. See, if you have bigger trees before the flood, you would need bigger beavers to chew them down. God kept everything balanced in those days. Salamanders today get from 5 to 8 inches long, typically. Did you know fossil salamanders have been found that are 6 feet long? Increasing air pressure means more gas gets into the water, and fish have to breathe in the water through their gills. So if you had more gas dissolved in the water from greater air pressure, now the fish can get bigger. And you can get a lot more fish per cubic mile. Today, if a shark has a tooth about an inch long, it indicates the shark was probably about 15 feet long. Did you know fossil sharks' teeth are found indicating sharks used to get 80 feet long on this planet? Can you imagine an 80-foot shark? The movie Jaws had a 25-foot shark. You'd have to use Jaws for bait to catch one of these megalodons. Dr. Baugh is raising piranha in an aquarium with a stronger magnetic field around it. Just increasing the magnetic field is doing something because his piranha are 4 times larger than normal. When he raised fruit flies in a hyperbaric chamber, they lived 10 times longer than normal, just by increasing air pressure. If you combine the air pressure and the filtered sunlight and the stronger magnetic field, you'd probably get Garden of Eden conditions. They probably lost at least those things, maybe at least those 3 things. Maybe more things have been lost since then. Turtles got pretty good size. That's a big turtle on the left. Oysters were found 2 miles above sea level, 11-foot oysters weighing 600 pounds, 2 miles above sea level in the Andes Mountains. When they climbed Mount Everest, they found petrified clams on top of Mount Everest. Interesting thing about these clams, they're petrified and they're closed. Now, I'd like to point out, Mount Everest is a little ways from the beach, first of all, okay? About 450 miles to the beach. And clams do not climb mountains very well. And when a clam dies, it opens. You can walk along the beach and find 1,000,000 seashells. You hardly ever find a matched pair. And you never find them closed if they're dead. They open right away. How do you get petrified closed clams on top of Mount Everest? I think there was a flood. But I don't think the flood was over Mount Everest. Mount Everest wasn't there. Psalm 104 tells us the mountains arose during the last part of the flood. The mountain ranges formed during the end of the flood, probably as a result of the Earth's crust being cracked open and busted up into pieces, and pieces would lift up and flex back and forth. We cover all that on video number 6. Reptiles never stop growing. It's a simple fact. Most reptiles never stop growing. They grow all their life. People stop growing. When you're 16 or 18, you're going to quit growing, at least vertically. Some go horizontally thereafter, but reptiles never stop growing. What would happen to a reptile if you put him in the Garden of Eden and let him live to be 900 years old? You'd have a big lizard. A really big lizard. Dinosaurs were big lizards that lived with Adam and Eve before the flood came. You can get these Jackson chameleons right now at the pet store. What's he going to look like at about 15 tons? Probably some kind of triceratops. Dinosaur means terrible lizard, and dinosaurs lived with humans all through history. They just had a different name for them. We'll cover more on dinosaurs on video number 3. But dinosaur bones and human bones have been found together. Dinosaur bones were found in the same rock strata as these fossilized human hands. Dinosaur bones and mammal bones found together. Here's one of the Ica stones showing a human riding a dinosaur. Dr. Baugh has a couple of the stones in his museum. We have 8 in our museum now of these Ica stones. I think we have the largest collection in America of these Ica stones from Peru. Many of them show dinosaurs on there. Cover more on that on Seminar Part 3 about dinosaurs in the Bible. Dinosaur footprints and human footprints have been found together in Glen Rose, Texas. I know there's controversy about this. I've been there 5 times. I've heard all the critics on it. And I've been there myself to check it out, okay? But go to Dallas, Texas, and go south 45 miles to Glen Rose, and you'll find the Paluxy River flows through this little town, and it's all full of limestone. The whole area is limestone, kind of like around here in Knoxville. Well, that river cuts through this limestone layers. In 1908, there was a flood. The river dropped 17 feet per mile, but this flood was incredible. It was, I think, 30 feet above flood stage or something. It was just an incredible flood in 1908. It ripped off the bottom of the river, tore off the layer of limestone. 2 foot of limestone was ripped up. Underneath was a new layer of limestone, and when the river dried up that next summer, they discovered there are hundreds of dinosaur footprints. Dinosaur footprints. It's called Dinosaur Valley State Park. There's a book on the table right there if you want to read more about it. They chiseled out lots of the footprints and took them to museums to save them so they wouldn't get eroded by the river. Took out huge blocks in the 1930s and set them up under dinosaur skeletons. Footprints are big. Here's a little kid taking a bath in one. But sometimes in this area they find human footprints with the dinosaur footprints. Human tracks and dinosaur tracks together. We could spend all day talking about this. There's been thousands of reports on this thing made. Some believe it, some don't believe it. Here's a trail of human tracks and crossing a trail of dinosaur tracks. And the human footprints, some of them are pretty good size, and occasionally they're found inside the dinosaur footprint. Well, if you're running through the mud to escape the flood, that's the logical place to step. Right where somebody else already stepped. Just like walking through deep snow. And I think a lot of people get the wrong idea. They think Noah got in the ark, the rain started, and everybody died in the first 10 minutes. It probably took 6 months to kill everybody on this planet. They'd be running, looking for high ground. The water kept coming up. See, the rain was 40 days, but the Bible says, the water kept coming up for 150 days. Because most of the water is coming from inside the crust of the earth, up through the fountains of the deep. The flood, the rain did almost nothing for the flood. It was water from inside that caused the flood. It probably took 6 months to kill everybody. So they'd be running, when the tide goes down, they'd run to higher ground. And pretty soon they'd be fighting for this higher ground, which is becoming more and more scarce. But the footprints are pretty good size. We sell castings of this one if you want to get one. It's in our website, Dr. Dino. You can see the size 24 human footprint. We had a kid try to fill it up one time, couldn't quite do it. Had a size 18. They chiseled out rock ledges and found more footprints underneath the undisturbed limestone. One of the footprints was sawn across the toes. They looked at it end grain, and you can see where it squeezed down and distorted the lamination lines. I know there's arguments about it. I've read, I think, everything on the topic. Sure read a lot, but I'm very convinced they're legitimate. The footprints have a 6 to 7 foot stride. This would take a big man to be stepping 6 or 7 feet every time. A friend of mine was down there when they were digging out the footprints. He wrote me this letter. He's now an assistant pastor at a Southern Baptist church in Arizona. He said, Dr. Hovind, I grew up in Glen Rose. I was on an excavation with Dr. Carl Baugh. We followed the footprints of a man beside a dinosaur's footprints. It was as if the man were walking with the dinosaur. Nova was there to film the dig. There was also an evolutionist who was arguing with Dr. Baugh the entire time. Nova didn't film much of the tracks or our dig, but they did interview the evolutionist. He told them he had not seen anything there to disprove evolution. What he didn't tell the camera was he had refused to turn around and look at the tracks we were working on. When they found one, they would tap him on the shoulder and say, sir, you want to look at this? He'd say, no, I don't want to see it. He stood with his back to the dig and the tracks while making these statements.